means it's a plot to drop the IQ. Fighting amongst each other over rulers that don't like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood ones of holly. Suggestions that obliterate to camouflage the folly. Attempted mental robbery, executed sloppily. The hypocrisy, this mockery, and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the Akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet.
Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Welcome back to Rogue Ways, where tonight we're talking about Sanskrit Cymatics. Yes, the Sanskrit language and the Cymatics produced in speaking it, as well as some other amazing attributes of Sanskrit language and the technology of all of creation all throughout the universe. You know, just some light topics tonight. That's what we'll be talking about. And we'll just jump into it now as I invite you to go to rogueways.org. This is where everything I do can be found. You can find my books, my spiritual healing sessions, ceremonial healing. You can read about the retreat, even though we won't be doing it again until next year, as far as I know, next summer solstice. You can check out the shop as well, where there's beautiful orgone lotus photos, beautiful orgone pillars, and more. These ones that are up here right now, by the way, have been insanely charged by the source field and the energy of the recent Blazing Brightness retreat. So I can't even believe that they just get to go into the hands of whoever happens upon them, but that's their job in the universe and that's their role, and they're going to love it. So if any of these call to you, now is the time to grab them. Everything here at rogueways.org, so much that I do, so much that is more than just this show. So it's a great place to check things out. And rogueways.substack.com, also very good, different. You can sign up for my regular newsletter, my email list. I rarely send anything out. Or you can sign up for my Substack, which also can be delivered to your email inbox, or it can just be something you're subscribed to on your Substack app. And either way, you get lots of free content, like sometimes good articles on health and wellness, sometimes reviews of especially esoteric or mystical books, and updates such as the Blazing Brightness retreat coming up and all those types of events that I do. And you can also subscribe at the paid level and get the channeled messages, like Earth at the lowest density is one of those channeled messages here. Also, the most recent, What a Massive Success is a channeled message here. All kinds of good stuff at Substack. That's everything that I write, and those channeled messages as they come through from the spiritual ancestors for those of you who pay. It's also a really great way to support the show. So if you want to get those channeled messages and just have a way to support what I do, Substack is the place to subscribe. I think it's $6 a month. I think it's even cheaper if you do a year at a time. It's absolutely the best way to support me now that YouTube and Rockfin and these places where I used to get tips, or I used to get other sorts of memberships and things, are all gone. So this is the best way to keep continuing to support Rogue Ways and everything that I do. Thank you so much for your support there at rogueways.substack.com. And so we'll start here. This is a post from Robert Edward Grant. And, again, I talk about him somewhat frequently. I use a lot of his content here and there on the show throughout the years. He's a polymath. He is a mathematician specifically, but he's also a polymath, and many would say a genius. And, I'm most recently not super stoked at what he's doing with his AI venture, with his architect AI, as he calls it, promoting it to be some sort of super intelligence. And I mean, in a way, AI is, but he's promoting it as like an actual super intelligence. I won't get into it. I've talked about it on other episodes before. I'm not super happy with that, but I do love his mind. I love a lot of what he brings forward. And this was a post from actually February of this year. This is how long this has been on my docket to talk about on a show. And Robert Edward Grant says, Sanskrit is not just a language, it's a vibrational science. Rooted in deep phonetic precision, each syllable carries specific harmonic resonances that interact with the body, mind, and the fabric of reality. Unlike most modern languages, which are primarily symbolic in function, Sanskrit is considered a vibrational language where the sound of each word has a direct energetic impact. I'll just pause there and I'll bring your attention back to this idea that you can speak things into creation, or this idea that there are certain words, if you knew like abracadabra, that certain things would just happen for you. And this is sort of getting back to that idea that perhaps at some point, at least, we actually did have this language. And maybe Sanskrit is the closest living relative to that experience that we may have. If you look at all of human history as a sort of devolution from having been much closer to what we could call God and having devolved into our current state in this dark age, that perhaps at some point we did speak things into creation. As we know, that is allegedly how God, him, it, or herself created everything. All of creation was an emanation of sound from God, the substrate of all things being sound. And if that's true, then perhaps our small mortal vocal cords here could also reproduce or create sounds that would then change reality, create reality, right? We're made in the image of God. If you look back into ancient enough history, it seems we were definitely more advanced than we are now. Oh, we could do things like build pyramids, which we can't do now. And while some people like to explain that away by saying aliens did it, I am not so hasty. I say probably we did it. We just don't know how. In fact, one of the ways it is often recorded in many places that aren't mainstream history, that is passed down through thousands of years of secret societies and others, that we did those things using sound technology. Sound levitation. I've done so many episodes on sound and sound levitation and ancient technology and all of these things in the past. I'm just drawing our attention back to that in this discussion today because Sanskrit may be, again, closest to the way that we used to perhaps do things like that, the way we used to spell, meaning, right, to create with our voice, with our language, with our words, with our sound. So he says each Sanskrit letter is actually a technology, sound technology, not just symbolic. So a lot of our letters here in the English language and others are symbolic, and you can trace it back to like runes and other things that were representing like tigers or deer or like forests or other stuff, and they became letters eventually. And then the letters have a sound attached to them, and then we create words from those, and right. But this is saying, no, each letter of Sanskrit is actually a sound technology. And so the combination of letters to make a word would be the sound that would create that thing, or most closely correspond to the word that created that thing, perhaps. That's more like what they're saying for Sanskrit. So I'll go on to say, he says, the ancient seers who developed Sanskrit understood that sound is not merely a carrier of meaning, but a force that shapes consciousness itself. So a little bit different than what we're talking about. Instead of like creating matter, it shapes consciousness. This is actually the same thing, in my opinion, in my experience, and in my opinion, in my understanding. Everything is consciousness, just in different forms, varying degrees of exactitude, perhaps, or advanced consciousness, perhaps, refined consciousness, perhaps. But that everything's actually consciousness, and in some traditions, that's called spirit. Everything is spirit at its base, and then the sound shapes that, right? So in Sanskrit, he's saying the sound actually shapes consciousness. He says the phonetics of Sanskrit are aligned with the natural harmonics of the human body, particularly through their interaction with the energy centers or chakras. Each letter of the Sanskrit alphabet is associated with different points along the spinal column, and when spoken or chanted correctly, these sounds activate corresponding energetic pathways. And I'll pause there again, and I'll say this is actually what sacred sounds, seed syllables, or mantras are for. And, we talk about mantras and we make some up, and we'll say like, oh, I attract wealth, and like these types of things, affirmations, right? We'll call them mantras, and they are. But actual mantras, the technology of mantras, they're Sanskrit, right? And some other languages have some too. They're very similar, interestingly, and a lot of times. And oftentimes those cultures actually borrowed from Sanskrit and then maybe added a few of their own. So that's interesting too. That's maybe a separate discussion. But this is what they're for, right? These mantras are actually for activating energetic points in your body. And your body's technology can come back online, heal itself, allow a higher level of spirit or consciousness through it. Perhaps then start to have spiritual gifts and what we might call like psychicness or telekinesis or otherwise. And so that's what these are for. And so when chanted correctly, he says this will actually happen. He says this is why mantras, sacred Sanskrit formulas, are so effective in meditation and spiritual practices. They're not just words, but vibrational codes that realign the body's subtle energy. And it's true. I've seen it happen for myself. If you've ever used mantras like this, you may have seen it happen for yourself. You may have just been somewhere, or heard something. For sometimes they'll like start an event by someone coming out and like chanting Om 7 times. And you may have like felt the energy change, right? So maybe you've encountered this before. It's not just a perception. You can actually also measure this, which we'll get into. So he says, beyond the human system, Sanskrit also resonates with the cosmos. And I'll pause again. I'll say this is actually true of everything. Everything as above, so below, as within, so without. There's nothing that isn't involved in that sacred formula. It's just true. At every level up, every level down, every level out, every level in, it's fractals all the way, right? So we're repeating structures, forms, sounds, etc. There is nothing that isn't true for. As above, so below, as he says, or as I say, as he says, that it resonates with the cosmos. I'll go on. He says, ancient Indian texts describe the universe as being structured by sound, and Sanskrit is said to be one of the most refined expressions of this cosmic resonance. The vibrational purity of Sanskrit mantras allows them to create order in the mind, balance emotions, and even influence physical reality by aligning human consciousness with universal rhythms. And again, I'll just say the most common, and also the one to do if you were just going to pick one to do, is Om, which you could think of as O-H-M or A-U-M, Aum. Same sound, different way of thinking about it, depending on how you like to shape your mouth. And that's a good one, right? It's a good universal, good sacred seed syllable sound or mantra to use. So if you wanted to just practice with one, that's what you do, right? You would just get still. You would be somewhere where you can be relaxed. You take some deep breaths, right? And then just start breathe in and then Om. And it's not a race, and it's not a how long can I do it? It's actually just you do whatever your breath is doing. But it gets really nice when your breath is nice and deep and you're just nice and relaxed and you just have this long exhale, or you can say Om for a long time and that really gets to vibrate. That's a good one. So you can do that and you can just keep doing it. And you can do it 100 times, 108 times, some might say, you know. And that's a great way to start if you'd like to just start. But I will go on. He says, in this way, Sanskrit operates as both a language and a technology, a bridge between the seen and the unseen, the inner world and the greater cosmos. Whether through recitation, chanting, or silent contemplation, the resonance of Sanskrit has the power to transform perception, heal the body, and elevate consciousness to its highest potential. It's absolutely true. It's true, too, that if you have any practice of just regularly becoming still and going within, it's going to improve your life. This is, again, measurable. It's scientific. You don't even have to question it. It's just true. But if you add this piece of using these mantras, it's even better. And I'll add one more thing, which is that, the majority of people I work with, we all have sort of like some karma or some trauma or some damage in all of our chakras, most of us, even if it's minor, right? But what tends to have the greatest trauma and karma stuck up and like gumming up the system, and most people that I've ever worked with, thousands and thousands of people, is their throat chakra and their sacral chakra. So it's our place where our will lives and our emotional trauma lives, and also the place of our voice. So this also, if you were going to do this, would be really good for your throat chakra. It actually wouldn't even matter what sound you were making. If you're just making sounds and letting yourself do it in, peace and not carrying, not being attached to it or whatever, that's going to be healing for your throat. If you want to add to it this Om or this, one of the Sanskrit mantras, then you're also just assisting your body in other ways, assisting your consciousness in other ways. So double duty. If you want to double down, you can do that. So that's a post that got me first, like, sort of interested in Sanskrit and cymatics and sound energy and this sort of connection here. And, Sanskrit and the Vedas is also some of the oldest spiritual or religious literature we have. It's some of the most fascinating. It's some of the most mystical. This is where we get like the Vimanas and, the flying machines and the gods and the wars of the gods and all this sort of, history that is possibly actually what's taken place on Earth. More of a record than like a fanciful, mythology that was just created out of nothing, is what a lot of people think. In fact, it's so prescient in so many ways. The Vedas and the Puranas and others, is, these Sanskrit and these ancient Indian and Vedic texts, that they foresaw this modern world thousands of years ago when you couldn't have possibly known. And their books are like, yeah, when they sell food in packages in stores, you'll know you're in the dark age. And you're like, well, wait, how would you know that? Right? So there's something to it. There's something to this. We also know, if you followed this show long enough, or some others, rarely is anyone talking about it, but it happens. Robert Sepper is my favorite, who talks about this subject from an academic point of view. Before we called it Sanskrit or Vedic, we may have called it Aryan. And this may be a pre-cataclysmic civilization that had much higher technology than us, both mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. And just a little bit of that comes down to us today. And we see a little bit of it reflected here in this Sanskrit language and its technology as a language. And then you can imagine like how far we are, if that's true, whatever it might have been called, whatever the civilization was, pre-cataclysmic civilizations were, that we don't even have language anymore that even tries to do that, or even could understand that this was a thing that happened, that you could have used language to create intentionally mental, emotional, spiritual, or physical effect on reality and on people. We don't even consider that. And they had a whole language, right? So you can see like how far we fall. And we'll see here what this person says. This is it's from 2011, 2006, both. It's been updated. This is from a site called hansaduda.com. It's called The Potency of Sound. And it says, science shows it all began with sound. In the 1960s, Hans Jenny, a Swiss physician, artist, and naturalist, became interested in the relationship between sound waves and matter and performed a series of experiments to scientifically study and record the visual manifestations of sound waves at varying frequencies on various media. So this is sort of maybe like the beginnings of cymatics, or at least one of them that we've recorded, right, in our modern world. Dr. Jenny used crystal oscillators and invented an instrument called the tonoscope to enable him to observe the human voice's effect in generating and influencing patterns, shapes, and movement. Over a period of 14 years, he meticulously recorded and documented his findings. In 1967, he published his book, Cymatics, a study of wave phenomena, in 2 volumes with over 350 photos of his experiments. Yeah, so if you've heard of cymatics, or you've seen these like videos where people have the plate with the sands on it, or they've got water sometimes coming out of a spout, and then the sound goes through and makes it spiral. You'll see, really intricate geometric shapes on the sand patterning. And if you've seen all of that, he seems to be the pioneer of this work. So we owe it all. We owe it all to Dr. Jenny. At one point, he says, Dr. Jenny took an interest in Vedic yantras. So we're talking about Sanskrit, Vedic. This is the same area, right? And the yantras are like mandalas. Oh, it actually explains it. A yantra is a mandala that, did I say mandala? A mandala that corresponds to a particular sound or mantra, which in turn is representative of a particular deity. And, I really feel like you could look at most of this, and, forgive me if it's not your viewpoint, but you could look at most of the like Hindu and Vedic mythology as their deities being sort of aspects of consciousness. And I won't lie in saying that's actually how I see all of the spiritual beings, or aspects of consciousness or levels of consciousness that humans can perceive and relate to. And so I don't think this is any different. So they have these geometric shapes and designs called yantras that represent these deities, and also sounds or mantras. right? This is this again, thousands of years old technology. You wouldn't have the ability to, do what Dr. Jenny's doing in order to visualize sounds in matter. But this is already handed down, right? People already had received this. Like, here's the sound, here's the corresponding geometric shape or yantra, and here's the deity it's connected to. You want to connect with that deity, you say the sound, you draw or look at this yantra. Not mantra, but yantra. Mantras you speak, yantras you draw. So perhaps his most widely publicized research is his experiment verifying the relationship between the Sri yantra and the sound vibration Om. I didn't know that. Okay, so the Sri yantra is actually very special to me. So I should have known perhaps that it's connected to Om. But it's connected to Om. So we were just talking about Om. Well, here's the Sri yantra. Sri yantra is very masculine. It's very creative, we might say. Very cool design. If you've read my trilogy of books, The Sine Curve of Eons, book 2, Earth, A Trough in Time, has the Sri yantra as a sort of core component of that book. So if you know, you know. Dr. Jenny placed sound on a membrane and using the tonoscope to project the human voice onto it began to vibrate Om. Initially, the vibration produced a circle, which then began to fill with the concentric squares and triangles. And just as the last traces of sound died away, left the same geometric pattern as that of the Sri yantra. Wow. Dr. Jenny's precise methods enabled the experiment to be replicated again and again with the same results every time. That's so cool. Dr. Jenny also experimented with languages and the tonoscope. He found that when the vowels of the Sanskrit language were pronounced, the sand took the shape of the written Daiva Nagari character for these vowels. How would you even have done that on purpose unless you knew and understood sound creation, cymatics to a deep level? And this was passed down from antiquity. It's this type of thing where I'm like, I don't even understand how people can continue to imagine that the world began just a few thousand years ago, that culture or society, civilization began just a few thousand years ago. More than 4,000 years ago, we already had this technology and this language, but no ability to prove it or reproduce it. Passed down from pre-cataclysm times, obviously. Crazy. Humans are crazy. On the other hand, his experiments with modern language generally produced chaos. Oh, so he spoke just modern languages, which is all the ones we know. It's English, it's German, it's Spanish, it's Japanese, it's Chinese. It's not just East or West. It's all of them produce chaos. But Sanskrit produces beautiful, perfect geometrical shapes, or the shape of the letter that sound is written with. That's insane. I want to learn Sanskrit so bad after getting ready for this show that I just might have to do it. I wish we all were just raised speaking Sanskrit. And unfortunately, it's not likely, and we'll get to that too. Dr. Jenny concluded that sound generates form. The more one studies these things, the more one realizes that sound is the creative principle. It must be regarded as primordial. Primordial. That means before matter, right? Before life, before Earth. No single phenomena category can be claimed as the aboriginal principle. We cannot say in the beginning was number or in the beginning was symmetry, etc. These are categorical properties which are implicit in what brings forth and what is brought forth. By using them in description, we approach the heart of the matter. They are not themselves the creative power. This power is inherent in tone, in sound. That's in his book, Cymatics, Volume 2, page 100. And again, he is actually remembering something that is recorded all around the world in every tradition, which is that first there was the word, first there was sound, first God spoke. And it's said slightly differently, but it is always the same. So we knew that going in. We knew that even after Cataclysm erased most of our memory. We've known this. We just have science to remember and remind us that it's true. So we already know sound is powerful, right? And I hope, if anything, this brings you back to this understanding that, like, what you say matters and how you say it matters, and the energy you put into it matters. And I mean matters like physically, it creates matter, it affects matter, it matters. It's quite important, really. So this is an excerpt from the Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam. So again, another Vedic text. And it says, when egoism in ignorance is agitated by the sex energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the subtle element sound is manifested, and from sound come the ethereal sky and the sense of hearing. It's another way of saying sound came first, right? Sound emanated and created this. It appears from this verse, this person says, that all the objects of our sense gratification are the products of egoism in ignorance. It is understood from this verse that by agitation of the element of egoism and ignorance, the first thing produced was sound, which is the subtle form of ether. It is stated also in the Vedanta Sutra that sound is the origin of all objects of material possession, and that by sound one can also dissolve this material existence. This is said in many texts too, many sacred texts, many ancient texts, that God created, and again, you think of God however you want, doesn't matter, the creative principle, the thing that came before all things, right? But God created via the sound, and God can destroy via sound. God created everything in an instant via the sound, and if God wanted to uncreate it all he'd have to do is like reverse that sound. It's just be gone. And we know that now too, right? We can levitate things with sound. We can create things with sound via cymatics. We can also destroy with sound. We can move things with sound and change them with sound. We know that. Because this is actually technology we do have in the modern day. It's like not used very often, not talked about very often. I just saw a thing not that long ago where they had created something that puts out fires with sound. I mean, like, we have this technology. I just, I don't know, maybe it's not sexy enough for people. The entire material manifestation began from sound, and sound can also end material entanglement. The transcendental vibration Hare Krishna can do this, it says. So that must be another mantra that you can say if you want to stop being incarnated. If you want to stop incarnating and end this physical aspect of yourself and rise above egoism and manifesting yourself in physical form, Hare Krishna is it for you. Our entanglement in material affairs, he says, has begun from material sound. Now we must purify that sound in spiritual understanding. And this is kind of part of a lot of creation stories too, is like we were assholes and so we exist. Like we rebelled and so we exist, or we wanted to be different from God and so we exist, or we were created and part of God but we wanted to be separate and so we separated and now we exist. That's in a lot of these. So this is sort of on that side of looking at why we're here. Is almost like an accident, or like, well, okay, you go do it, see what happens, and here we are. And if that feels true for you, then Hare Krishna might also be good for you. So it just goes into some more spiritual takes on some of this. So we'll just move on to some other looks at sound, Sanskrit, and cymatics. And here's an article called Sanskrit Sound Vibrations Inspired Creation. This is from Intellectual Kshatriya, something. Dr. Satyanarayana. God, I'm so sorry. I'm just not good at pronouncing that. And this was originally in the Times of India Delhi edition. Sanskrit, it says, is called Deva Bahashra, language of the gods. So it's literally called the language of the gods. It's regarded as a divine language. Sanskrit letters are called akshara, or imperishable. Whew. They are neither created nor destroyed. When they're pronounced, they're not created, they become manifest. According to the Bhagavad Purana, the Sanskrit letters manifested from the mouth of Brahma with divisions such as svaras, vowels, and vyanjanas, consonants, vyanjanas, which are consonants, according to the pronunciation. So I may have shared it with you recently, or it may have been in one of my Substack articles. If you're there, it's definitely in one of the book reviews I did there, that's one way of thinking about sound in general. The sounds that we create is that actually there are only vowels, and everything else is the stopping of or shaping of the vowels with various stops and shapes of stops. So if you think about what's actually happening anytime you're pushing sound through you and out your mouth, it is a vowel. No matter how you move your mouth, you can make all the vowel sounds if you don't use your tongue. And all your tongue does is stop the sound in various ways, or slow it, or condense it in various ways. You can kind of pay attention to your tongue when you're doing t or r or n or any consonant sound, k, and you can see where that sound is being stopped by your tongue. And so actually the consonants don't exist. I mean, they do, right? But like they're actually just the shaping of vowels. And so really the language of God is just vowel sounds, which is pretty cool too. And so that's what that made me think of. That's not what they're talking about here, but I love that concept. It says, it is from the sound of these letters that the world was created. There are 33 Vyanjanas, which represent the 33 devas, namely, and 12 then they go through the different types of devas, which are their spiritual beings. The first, and they go into the different types of consonants. And they're cognitive senses, material elements, subtle elements, sense objects, creative energies. And so each of their consonants has to do with these different types of creation or aspects of creation. It's very cool. So cool. Like, we used to be cool, guys. We used to be really cool. I think we'll be cool again. Modern science, this article says, has proven that matter is energy vibration. Therefore, it makes sense that the world was created from the sound vibration of Sanskrit letters. It does actually make sense. Sound is the most subtle of energetic vibrations. And it says, this is also why sages who had perfected the science of mantra could bless or even curse someone. Their words could create the corresponding objects. According to Sanskrit Vyakaranam, grammar, there is an eternal relationship between a Sanskrit word and its meaning. For example, by chanting the mantra related to a specific deity, one can experience that deity because the deity of the mantra and the mantra have an inseparable relationship. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that if one leaves one's body while reciting the divine sound of Aum, or A-U-M, Aum, then one will become free from material conditioning. Whew. So yeah, there you go. Chant your ohms if you want to leave your body and be free of material conditioning. This is so, it says, because though Om appears to be an ordinary sound, is actually the name of the absolute reality and carries all powers in it of the Supreme. Just the absolute reality carries all powers of the Supreme. Traditionally, before the study of Sanskrit grammar, one has to study the science of pronunciation. In Sanskrit, proper pronunciation of a word is given a lot of importance. And so what I take also from part of what I've been learning today about this is that you can't actually mispronounce a word in Sanskrit, or rather, if you do, you're just not even saying the word. There's no, for example, dialects of Sanskrit, and there are no intonation differences, right? There's no, I'm not thinking of the word, but like you have a Western drawl and Southern drawl, and you've got your, Northwest chill and your Midwestern twang. You don't have any of that in Sanskrit. There is one way to pronounce it, and you pronounce it that way. It's a very technical language in that way, and that is not true of any other language that we know of. So it's very unique in that way. So they're describing here, like, you have to actually study pronunciation before you can even study the rest of the language. It says it's true of Vedic words that have an intonation. The meaning of a word can change with the change of intonation. So that's actually similar to Chinese too, right? There's the different tones. And if you don't intone correctly, you're saying a totally different thing. Again, you're not even saying the word, you're saying a totally different word. Recitation of stotras, prayers, and chanting of mantras are important parts of Hindu practice, as they are believed to yield spiritual benefits. Even those who do not understand the meaning can derive benefits just by reciting them. And that's true, again, if you understand how to pronounce a word and you can copy the sound, you can still have the effect. He says, but if one translates these stotras and mantras into English, then one cannot get the benefit of reciting the translation. That's really interesting. I remember criticizing once, and only half-heartedly, but criticizing that we say namaste. And I don't think that's Sanskrit, but maybe it is. But if we say namaste, I was like, why don't we just say what we mean? Why don't we just say the divine in me recognizes the divine in you? It's much more meaningful to me to say the divine in me recognizes the divine in you than it is to say namaste. Even if I know what namaste means, that's not what my brain thinks in. It doesn't think in namaste, but it thinks in English letters and language. And so if I say in English what I mean, it's more effective, right? But this is saying like there's actually a reason in Sanskrit to say it in Sanskrit, even if you don't know what it means, because that's actually creating the energy cymatically, scientifically, in exactitude. He finishes here by saying Sanskrit words have an inherent potency in them, which is not available if it's translated into English. Also, if translated, the words lose their original sense. For example, the word rishi in Sanskrit means rishaya mantra darishtara, one who sees the mantra or one who has direct experience of the truth. But if we translate rishi as sage, then the original sense of the word rishi is lost. According to the dictionary, sage means a profoundly wise man, especially one who features in ancient scriptures or legend. The exact meaning is lost in translation. So it's a language that can't be translated. You can translate it. You can get the meaning of what someone was like trying to say, or, the general context of a thing, but you're not actually getting the meaning. You're not actually transferring the information correctly. You're not creating this universal sort of harmonic, exact science-based language if you're not speaking it in Sanskrit. Pretty fascinating. So that's another take on this Sanskrit language. We'll see if there's anything new in here. So it says the alphabet, Sanskrit, is made up of 49 letters. Out of the 49 sounds, 35 of them are soft or more resonant. And this means there are considerably more resonant sounds on the building block level of the language. When you chant a Sanskrit mantra, you can't miss feeling its vibrational force. Again, that's what I'm saying. If you've actually done it, or if you've been somewhere where it's happening, you can tell. Even if you feel like some people are like, oh, I'm spiritually dense, or like I'm not sensitive, and you'd still know. You'd still feel it. Unless you're trying not to, and you're trying to be dense, and you're trying to be, contrarian, then sure, you can shut it down, I guess. But if you were actually open to it and you were feeling it, like you would tell. If you're doing it for yourself, you're going to be able to tell. If you're chanting a home for yourself, you're going to know. It says on a psychological level, when you chant a Sanskrit mantra, you become calmer, more at ease, and joyful. But what is at the core of the mantra's strength? A key element that makes a mantra powerful is its vibrational quality. Sanskrit is a language of vibration. Everything in the manifest universe is nothing but the vibration of atoms and molecules. When you connect what you are essentially on the manifest level, you can more easily feel what you are beyond manifestation. Chanting, it says, leads to unity. Chanting Sanskrit mantras stirs up energy. Similar to the concert metaphor, they talk about being at a concert above. Chanting a mantra, when you remain still, you can feel yourself as energy. Oh, it's so true. We had this really profound experience of this many, many times over and over again at the Blazing Brightness retreat that we just finished. I just finished leading last week. We all felt this. And we did do some mantras. We did do some intoning and some sacred seed syllables and whatnot. But just in general, right, you can actually feel in your body the vibration of the energy moving through it when you are in a state of alignment with a higher intention, a higher consciousness, a higher energy level. It's not, again, you can measure it scientifically. So we know it's there also. We've already proven this with meditation, with chanting all these things over and over and over and over and over again. But you can actually feel it too. Again, it doesn't matter if you think you're spiritually dense or not subtle or whatever, you can too. Everyone there did, 100%. And I tell people this, and I don't know, they don't believe me all the time, I think, but this is one of my most frequent pieces of feedback I get, is that people are like, oh, I didn't know I could go that deep until I did like a meditation with you or a session with you. And it's not me, right? But it's that anybody who has practice this so diligently through many lifetimes and also through this lifetime can do that. And then it's my honor to share it with people. And so when people say that to me, it's one of my greatest honors I get to hear in life. It is that, because when you can acknowledge that you have felt and you know that something actually happened to you that was of an energetic, vibrational, or consciousness level, that's pretty profound, right? Then you start to understand it's beyond a conception. You know yourself as such. When you know yourself as such, the whole world is a different place for you. It says, the more you remain with this inner stillness that the chanting gives you access to, the more you feel less separateness, or put another way, the more you feel unity. And that's true too. And that's another thing I hear quite frequently, right? Is that feeling of like, oh, we really are all one. Yeah. We're also very much separate, but we also are all one. So both things are true. So the Sanskrit alphabet is also called a divine garland. And this garland or this thread or this string or this chain is like a very common, very profound symbol universally all throughout the world, all throughout most traditions. And the Sanskrit alphabet is actually one of these, which is very fascinating. I think it's the only language considered as such, as this string. And this idea of this garland or this string is something that connects you to something higher, something more pure, something divine. Sometimes it's something divine throughout time, through all times and all spaces. This chain connects, right? You might think of that as like the fractal line or whatever it is, but it's connecting you to something more, something higher, something bigger, something deeper, something beyond. And the Sanskrit alphabet is that, a divine garland. So this article is from hansavedas.org, and it says Sanskrit is an expansive language with roots that stretch back thousands of years. Sanskrit, or more properly, Samskrita Bhasa, means the highly refined or perfected language. The Sanskrit alphabet has encoded and preserved religious, philosophical, artistic, and scientific traditions in India and beyond, from antiquity up through the modern times. So they're not getting into the weeds here, but they're telling you this goes beyond India and it goes beyond thousands of years ago into what we could call antiquity, pre-cataclysmic. The Sanskrit alphabet, it says, is envisioned as a garland, of indestructible phonemes, which are the sounds, right? Hence, one of the names for alphabet in Sanskrit is Aksharamala. It is also known as the garland of letters, or the traditional arrangement of phonemes. Sanskrit was revered by Vedic people as the voice or language of the gods. It most literally means voice, but can be translated as speech or language. This has been worshipped as a goddess since the time of the Vedas. In tantric traditions, the divinity of the alphabet is expressed in the forms of Maktra, or the little mothers, and Malini, the garlanded goddesses. Every articulated phoneme of Sanskrit directly expresses the language's divine origins. Literally, they're telling you that this came from, quote unquote, the gods or divine space or time, which again, if you look at the understanding, the story of existence of the universe, we emanated from God, separated from God, and then we just continued our fall and our descent and our separation until we're here in the dark age. So when it says from the gods, it's not saying some external beings to us. It's not saying some faraway aliens that came and gave us this advanced technology. I mean, then if so, where did they get it from? Right? No matter where you go, you have to say, like, well, where did it actually come from in us? And it came from us in us. It came from our first emanation from God, from the first sound uttered forth to create creation. And here we are with the garland of that. We still have it. Sanskrit still exists today. It came all the way from the time where we were much, much closer to God, and perhaps could have been called gods ourselves in a way. Sanskrit, it says, is the oldest continuously employed language in the world. It is estimated there are 30 million Sanskrit manuscripts that we know of, making Sanskrit humanity's largest vehicle of culture heritage. To talk about the garland, right? If you could actually read all those things and understand them, you may have a better idea of what happened to us and how we got here. Though Sanskrit is most associated with India, Sanskrit works were composed throughout Asia from Kazakhstan to Bali. In this article, you'll learn the basic organization of the Sanskrit alphabet and how to pronounce and write in Sanskrit letters. Okay, so we're not going into all that. But it does say it's lucid and logical. It's a testament to Sanskrit's refinement, how logical it is. I mean, it is like the periodic table of elements of alphabets. It's like really precise, and each sound creates a somatic structure that is exactly the letter that represents it. This is like, that can't be an accident. This is all you need to know that like the world is much stranger than we're led to believe, and much older. It says, we live in an age dominated by the written word, so it's easy to forget that language means something more than writing. Language is a system of communication which embodies all the sounds, signs, gestures, and possibly also mental representations of that language. So really it's saying it represents all things. It's meant to represent all possible things. Thus, we can see writing as a distinct component of language, the markings and symbols that we use to represent linguistic sounds. It says the letters versus speech sounds. Based on the above distinction, we can extrapolate that there's a distinction between the fundamental sounds of language and the symbols used to represent them in writing. Not so with Sanskrit, though. They are the same thing, actually. In Sanskrit, it says each phoneme is represented by a unique letter, which is always pronounced the same, no matter where it occurs in a word or sentence. Also helpful. So way better than any other system. When that's true, that's great. I remember it was easy for me to learn Turkish because every letter makes only one sound, no matter what, one sound only, the end. Sanskrit is apparently the same. So we won't get more into this. It's going to actually like literally teach you how to make every sound, which is amazing. So if you wanted to get started with Sanskrit, you could go to hansavedas.org. Pretty cool. Divine garland, divine connection between us and the gods. It still stretches on to this day if we choose to grasp it. And so this is also from Zoe McCaffrey. This is from Morphology and Syntax. It says, Sanskrit is a language with use beyond communication. It says, Sanskrit is a language reveled for its complexity in many regards. It's grammatically very complex, has rich phonemic library, and is considered to be one of the oldest documented languages in the world, approximately 3,500 years old. It's the language that the original sacred Hindu texts were written in, including the Vedas, Ramayana, Mahabharata. So in this regard, is a highly respected language. However, it is also recognized as the language of the privileged castes in India. And so they have to get into their like woke stuff around that. I'll just say the reason there even are castes in India is because some very advanced people came post-cataclysm, perhaps called the Aryans, and were very different from the people they found there. So they just were different. It wasn't like, oh, we're better and you're worse, get on your knees for us. It was just like, this is a totally different, quite advanced culture coming into a very non-advanced culture. And so they're just different. There just are different. There just is differences in quality. So I don't think this is the article, however, that gets into the, we'll get there. So first we'll just say Sanskrit literally translates to make together, or elaborate and compose together, create together. This is just the etymology you can get off of Google, but in other etymological analyses, it's actually means the language of the gods. So that's really interesting too, but it does have to do with creation and unity. So that's interesting, right? NASA actually, and AI researchers have studied Sanskrit due to its precise syntax and minimal ambiguity. It is actually it's the oldest language, and it's the only one with no ambiguity, with very precise grammar rules that cannot be broken, with only one meaning per thing, and in which you're cymatically creating as you speak it. It's fascinating. I'm sure NASA, it's like lost on NASA. They're like, how can we turn it into an AI thing? Like, they actually looked at it as complex as computer programming. So there you go for all you people who believe we're living in some sort of matrix simulation. The Sanskrit would be, again, one of the keys to the code then. It says Sanskrit is precise, well-defined grammar and structure. Its organized grammar and symbolic nature of its philosophical and mathematical texts make it useful for AI systems. So it has potential in AI applications. So they don't actually use it for AI, but they just studied it because it was as though it was written as a computer program. It was that precise in language. We're not used to language being like that. So AI researchers and NASA is very, very enamored by it, even since 1985. So pretty interesting. So yeah, Sanskrit is also praised for its mathematical nature, which again makes sense. If you're creating cymatically with sound, that is math. If you look at cymatic structures, they're elegant and they are uniform, right? And they're precisely mirrored, right? They have a balance. This is just like sacred geometry. So it is mathematical. Someone devised a system of 4,000 rules that function like an algorithm to generate the entire structure of the Sanskrit language. 4,000 rules. So it's like a meta language. And it does have generative power. It produces a potential. And so scientists, mathematicians, and all sorts of people who study language, they're fascinated by Sanskrit. It is the only thing of its type. There's nothing like it on Earth. So Nassim Haramein recently, and it'll seem like we're going off track here for a minute, but we'll tie it all together. Don't worry. Nassim Haramein tweeted a while ago. He also put some up on his site and on Instagram, wherever you might follow him. And he's my favorite physicist. Nassim Haramein. His movie Black Hole, WHOLE. If you haven't seen it, it's a classic. I don't know, it's like early 2000s, super good. It says, in a groundbreaking discovery that challenges our fundamental understanding of physics, scientists at Columbia University have revealed that sound waves possess actual mass. You may already see where I'm going with this. We'll continue. This fascinating finding demonstrates that sound, traditionally thought of as merely a form of energy, which, what does that mean? What's not merely a form of energy? The whole universe we have merely a form of energy, but anyway, scientists. Carries tiny but measurable gravitational mass through quantum particles called phonons. Now, just put aside for a moment if gravity exists as we think or not. Nassim would also question what gravity actually is. We're just using this term to describe the force that seems to pull things together. Okay, so whatever you want to think of that is, just go with it. To put this into perspective, he says, a 1-watt sound wave traveling through water for just 1 second carries approximately a 0.1 milligram of mass, a minute amount, but one that opens up entirely new avenues of scientific inquiry. The implications of this discovery are profound. Sound waves not only respond to gravitational forces, but also generate their own minuscule gravitational fields, adding an unexpected layer to our understanding of acoustic physics. So I'll add, it's a fascinating layer to add to the sound is at the substrate of all things. Sound is the first emanation beyond source, or the unknowable unknown. The part of reality we couldn't ever touch with our conscious mind or any of our senses. Just beyond that, sound is the thing. And here we see that sound can create gravity, which also then creates matter, or rather calls matter together, holds it together, gives it structure or form. So they're just showing that it's actually possible scientifically that is literally what happened. Oh, the revelation aligns with the groundbreaking research conducted by the International Space Federation, where we have been exploring the fundamental relationships between energy, mass, and quantum vacuum fluctuations. By the way, the International Space Federation is one of his organizations that's just for the advancement of very otherwise alternative sorts of energies and research into the woo-woo side of physics and science, right? The stuff that they won't let us research, essentially. So you don't have to believe in space to like it. You can do whatever you want. The ISF's work on the origin of mass and the nature of gravity provides a complementary theoretical framework suggesting that mass itself emerges from quantum electromagnetic vacuum fluctuations. Using sophisticated analytical techniques, the ISF researchers have demonstrated how these vacuum field interactions might explain both gravitational forces and quantum phenomena within a unified model. So this is another thing he's constantly showing, is that there is actually unity between the quantum, the micro and the macro, which we have to have, or else we're not actually making sense of the universe. And he has many, many, many breakthroughs around that, and still is not as acknowledged as he should be. But here's one more, right? This is gravity, sound, creating gravity or mass. For those intrigued by these fundamental questions about the nature of this ongoing research, a challenge that has captivated physicists since Einstein's time. Dive deeper into this fascinating discovery. So you can read more about it, but that's probably enough for us. Pretty cool. And while we're on the topic of just the nature of the universe, and how it's created and what's sort of going on, I'll just throw out here that we also had this revelation somewhat recently, sometime earlier this year, that the water on the earth is older than the sun. That the sun actually developed after the water in our solar system already was here. And that goes far outside of what people expected to find. So it says, it's true, much of the water on Earth and in our solar system is indeed older than the sun. This is because water molecules can form in interstellar space. I mean, this is the opposite of what they told us. Space is a vacuum. Yeah. How could it be, first of all? And also, so water's just floating through a vacuum? Okay. And definitely not what we were told either. But it again corresponds to most creation myths. They're like, in the darkness, in the void, there were the waters. And then God spoke, right? and even more began to accumulate. And God had spoken before that, right? Because in the beginning was the word. And then there was the darkness, and then there were the waters, and then God spoke again, and then there was light, and then there was a division of the waters, etc., etc. So we continue to find scientific evidence that these ancient scriptures and these ancient creation stories that all agree with one another, even though they supposedly had no contact back then, that they are perhaps correct as what actually took place. But who's going to admit it? I guess just me and you. So they go on to say how they figured this out or why, but we don't really need to get into this. We also have this, just speaking of waveforms and creation and all the different ways that things can emanate or come together or be created. Laser light was made into a super solid. So, I have people who try to mock me. I don't know. I think they're just uncomfortable with things or life or themselves or whatever. But they'll be like, oh, you think sound and light are the same thing? Duh. I'm like, well, I mean, obviously they're not. But yes, they are continuations of a theme. The theme being vibration and the subtlest being sound, and then light, and then harder, denser matter. And here again, we have science showing that this continuation, right, which some people call the cosmic keyboard, is exactly what's going on. That like the states of matter and the changes between things are just a matter of energy and vibration, and form and expression, and that's it. That it's all energy. But I would have thought that was obvious to anyone who'd ever studied even like basic chemistry. I think it's implied in all of chemistry. Well, apparently some people don't take that far. So just, to reinforce this, we've made light into a solid. And it's a super solid, to be fair, but it's a state of matter that is different from how we perceive light, and it is much more material or dense than we consider light to be. So quite interesting that we've done this for the first time this year. That is another breakthrough that we have made. And speaking of lasers, I'll just touch once again on this thing. I couldn't remember the name of the film or whatever, but there's somebody who's been making a splash because he's done this thing, which is very cool. It's very cool research. But he's basically like having people, I think, microdose, but maybe they're a little bit macrodosing on DMT. And then he shines lasers and they look into the light and they can see the code within the light. And for some reason, that has indicated to a lot of people that we live, again, in this matrix. And so I'll again say we do, and it's also not a computer. A matrix means the material by which something develops, the matter in which something develops, or the environment in which something develops. So are you developing? Yes. Well, then you're in a matrix. The end. Like, you don't even, that's enough. You could just stop there. If you wanted to say it is therefore a computer simulation, there's literally no evidence of it. Literally no reason to jump to that. There's one thing that makes people think that, and it's the movie The Matrix, which is a retarded thing to base your worldview off of. That movie is a metaphor for our experience as spiritual beings in a material world. That's all. It's not real that we're in a computer simulation. Technically, I don't know that, and I can't say that for sure. But realistically, I know that because I've been out of my body and I've been all around and I've gone to the center of the universe and I've come back to Earth, and that stuff's all there. And even if you wanted to say, oh, that's all part of the simulation too, it's all part of the computer program and you're just moving to different parts of the computer, well, you're really saying nothing different to me than that you call the material universe a computer, because there would be nothing outside of this for you. So, like, what would you know about what's outside of the computer? So if you want to call the material universe a computer, go ahead. I call it the material universe, so we'll just have different terms for the same thing that's exactly the same in every intent and purpose, in every aspect of your experience, and nothing about it is computer-like at all. At all. And so when people are looking at this laser and they're seeing the codes in the walls, whether you were on DMT or not, you could see this if you were sensitive enough and if you wanted to, and if you protect your eyes or whatever you need to do. You're not seeing through something into its code. You're seeing the code of the light. You're seeing the light code. You're seeing the laser's code. Light is information, period. All things are, actually. It's another way of saying spirit, or another way of saying, the consciousness of all things. It's a code. So it's one way of seeing a little bit lower, a little bit deeper in to this. That's not computer-like. That's light-like. The light is everywhere, and all of it's carrying information. And if you were to translate into your human mind what it is, you'd see it like a code. You'd see it like an equation. You'd see it like a series of cymatic emanations or forms, because that's what the universe is. Not a computer. So it's cool. It's a cool movie. It's a cool concept. But when then people then extrapolate and go like, we live in the Matrix, we're like, hey, we'll just say it a few more times. I'm not attached to whether you really believe that or not. I just want to give people the opportunity to see a little bit deeper and clearer than that delusion. And some people also seem to see a matrix-like experience when they're on DMT, and other people don't. So, I mean, when you're looking out at the world or the universe and you happen to be on some of these drugs, which I don't suggest to anybody unless you're deeply called by your soul to do it. But when you're looking out, you might see a cage or something that feels inescapable to you. Now, that does not mean that you're an escape or something, like a cage or something inescapable. It means that that's your experience of the world. And then if you're me, you might see how incredibly, unspeakably beautiful and perfect every single thing is, and how interconnected it is, and how all of it is actually just God talking to the universe. And that's because that's my experience of life. And so you're going to see yourself. And you're going to see yourself in everything you see. And that's why it's so important to know yourself. Because you're going to only see you for the rest of time. And if you don't know that, you might think, for example, as Robert Edward Grant thinks, that your AI is a super conscious God telling you how to live, instead of realizing you're just talking to yourself, but calling it AI. So you have to know yourself. And as they've been saying for thousands of years, know yourself, know everything. Know yourself, know everything. And so since everything is cymatic sound emanation and then light and the codes within it and the shapes that come forth from that, and we can use that in order to know ourselves better and create as we wish, we may also want to think about how we use those tools, which are actually divine tools. And I'm getting better and better at calling myself on talking poorly or being crabby or being negative or talking shit or talking trash or swearing a lot for no reason, right? These are all habits I've picked up and had and developed in myself for many years. And I realize the negative energy I'm creating in doing that. And I'd rather have a bit of higher energy than that. And so here's a really interesting thing. If you can see this little video here, I wish I could make it bigger for you. Actually, let me see if I can try. Let me see. No, I can't. I forgot. That's just what Instagram does. So if you can see it, it's just interesting. It's going to show you a leaf that is cut apart. And you can see that even the part that's cut off is still actually there energetically. So here they are. They've got it in their special contraption. It's cut, and you can see when they turn the light off and only look at the energy, they can see the whole leaf. The whole leaf is still there. And it may seem small, right? This is light-based, and it's matter-based, and it's sound-based. It may seem small to you, but ideally you're thinking of, again, the energy you create. In this case, for this episode, at least, we've been focusing on sound. So the energy you speak into creation, it's still there. You can't actually ever take it back. Once it exists, it's there, right? The energy you create when you move, the energy you create with what you think and what you do, all these things last. All these things last and they can't be undone. It's okay. We make mistakes, but also you maybe want to become more and more and more and more and more and more intentional with what you do and what you think and what you say. What you speak into existence, because it actually creates. That's how creation occurs. You, in fact, were given divine gifts if you choose to use them. And until you do, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first.
Glued to them screens, it's a plot to drop the IQ. Fighting amongst each other over rumors that don't like you. Prefer trapped in melancholy with the wood ones of holly. Suggestions that obliterate to camouflage the folly. Attempt a mental robbery, executed sloppily. The pomp proceed as mockery and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the Akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet.